So this is definitely one of the coolest presentations I've ever seen. I mean, the box, the wax melt here on the front, the stamp, the silk on the inside, the notes written inside the box. I mean, and the bottle itself is absolutely gorgeous. I've actually reviewed another fragrance by this brand. The brand is called Agatho, and I've reviewed Fauno. I'm going to leave a link to that up here. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at a fragrance called Adone. This is from 2019. I'm excited to give you my thoughts on this fragrance. Make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin my fragrance review of Adone by Agatho, and I tell you all about this rose-based fragrance, a very clean, watery rose, I do want to start things off by mentioning that if you're a fan of fragrance-related content, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Please, please, please. All you got to do is click that red button. It would mean so much to me, and it's absolutely free. Hit the bell so you can be notified whenever I do upload these videos, and give the video a thumbs up if you took something of value from today's episode. Now, the perfumer for this is Maurizio Cerizza, and he has done every fragrance in this line, if I'm not mistaken. And I do have a few from this brand, with Fauno being one that I've reviewed most recently, although it was like a few months ago. Here we have one that I've been holding off on because it's a rose-dominant fragrance. It actually has damask rose. And whenever I think of floral perfumes, I think of the springtime. We're in the spring right now, so I thought it would be season appropriate. Perhaps I'll take a look at some of their other offerings as it starts to get cooler again in the autumn, because I find that most of the fragrances that this brand has released are actually on the darker side of things. So in terms of the note breakdown, this is a very clean and watery rose. There's damask rose that smells so organic and so natural. There's also a nice amount of grapefruit in the opening. There's jasmine, there's wisteria. So you are going to get some floral ingredients in here. It's definitely on the clean side of things. It's a little musky in the base as well. I'm going to get in a lot more detail in regards to the smell, but let's go ahead and take a quick look at the presentation. As I said before, this is a beautifully done, natural smelling rose fragrance. And I looked online, and some people compared it to Cartier's Declaration d'un Soir, and I kind of get a little bit of that, but there's something very bright and vibrant in the opening because it has that grapefruit. So the grapefruit is such a cool addition to the composition because, you know, the rose itself is very natural smelling, very organic. If you are a lover of rose perfumes, you have to try Adone, but it's that extra touch of grapefruit in the opening that just instills life into the rose. As if it weren't lively enough on its own, it has now the assistance of the grapefruit to kind of add an extra layer of life, if you will, right? And so it characterizes the rose and it shapes it in such a beautiful way. And then you also have some other floral components in here. You do have a little bit of jasmine, which sort of cleans things up and contributes to that floral bouquet. A little wisteria as well to add to the complexity. And so you smell it and it's clean, it's rosy, it's herbal, it's fresh, it's citrusy, it's musky, but in a very clean and tranquil manner. And so thinking about, you know, the variety of different fragrances that I have in my collection, certainly in the springtime as the weather starts to get a little bit warm, I do like my citrus fragrances, I do like my herbal fragrances, and I also really like my aquatic and oceanic fragrances, as long as it's not something that's going to choke you out and choke out those around you who are going to be smelling it on you. And I think in the case of Adone, if you want something that is very bright, something that is quite animated, but also something that smells really organic, I think the damask rose that is used in here is really going to do that for you. And so in addition to the rose, you're also going to get a little bit of geranium. Now, of course, the geranium is secondary to the rose because I would say like the rose adds like 70% of the smell and the geranium does the remaining 30%. And geranium in and of itself also has a rosy smell, and it adds a little bit of like a minty vibe to the fragrance. And so it kind of just adds a little bit of dimension and personality to that rose ingredient, again, as if the rose needed any help, right? It does so much on its own, and it's such a clean and vibrant rose ingredient. And again, there's so many great rose-based fragrances on the market. Lyric for Men by Amouage is one of my favorites. There's also Moschino's Toy Boy, and I also mentioned Cartier Declaration d'un Soir. All of these are amazing rose fragrances. If you want something with a little more va-va-voom, I would go with Portrait of a Lady by Frederic Malle, even Porpora by Tiziana Terenzi, which actually smells quite similar to the Portrait of a Lady, but these are like really strong rose fragrances. And here you have definitely the cleanest one of all the ones I just mentioned, right? Some can be spicy. If it's like a Noir de Noir by Tom Ford, you have the patchouli, it's chocolatey, it's dark, very Valentine's Day themed. But here you have a beautifully done, clean and vibrant rose that I think is also fairly gender neutral. And so if you're a guy and you want a rose-based fragrance, but you don't want something that smells overly floral, it is floral in the literal sense. You know, you just can't deny that, right? You can't circumvent that. But if you want a rose-based fragrance that has a lot more happening in here that doesn't smell explicitly feminine, check this one out. I know with Max Aroma, you definitely have the option to sample fragrances. And so this is available at Max Aroma. I think they have pretty much every fragrance from this brand, and so I would definitely recommend sampling them, smelling as many as you can via the sample process, because I know especially in the case of a lot of niche fragrances, they can tend to be on the pricier side of things. Very well done with Adone. I'm really enjoying this fragrance, and it's gonna get a lot of use out of me. A lot of niche fragrances I buy, and they're kind of like unicorns in my collection. I wear them once and I put them away. Not this one. I think the versatility in here is something that is going to allow this fragrance to get a lot of play, and it's going to be in the high rotation in terms of what I wear. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I think I named like half a dozen rose fragrances, and at the end of the day, this is very, very different from all of them. So kudos to the brand for releasing something unique and original. The geranium, the rose, the grapefruit, the jasmine, the wisteria, all of these ingredients kind of coalesce to paint a picture of a fragrance that smells very bright, clean, and floral at the same time, while still possessing that element of tranquility. Very well done. In terms of the longevity, 8 hours on my skin. Projection was great for the first 45 minutes. It was never overly loud. I know the grapefruit does contribute to that projection that you're gonna get in the first 45 minutes, but the performance was pretty consistent. So even at that 5 and 6 hour mark, I was still smelling it quite strongly, and the concentration for Agatho fragrances is pretty strong, and so just something to keep in mind. Versatility, very good. I think this one is perfectly unisex. Spring and summer is really where it's at. Formal and casual as long as you can afford it. And somebody who's a little bit older will probably enjoy this a little bit more, just because a lot of Agatho fragrances are complex. They have an intricate nature about them. And so if you're a young gentleman and you just want something very clean, straight to the point, if you're wearing, you know, Versace Eros and, you know, some of these other, you know, modern designer freshies and sweet tonka bean fragrances, then maybe this is not going to be the fragrance for you. But I do think there is a certain level of complexity that would make it appreciated by somebody who's a little bit older and probably has a little bit more experience dealing with niche fragrances. And the presentation, one of the best presentations, there's a little Freudian slip there, but we have a really cool sleeve on the box as well, and so a lot of attention to detail. You got to give credit where it's due. My final verdict on this fragrance is I love it. I think it's a great fragrance if you're looking for a clean rose. Very well done. I think the brand did an awesome job, and you also have a really cool presentation from a solid Italian niche house. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. Hit the bell, give it a thumbs up for the algorithm. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.